On episode 88 of the podcast, some weeks ago, we talked about trademarks. There, we talked about general trademark generally definitions and all that. But today, we'll go deeper into trademarks, especially in an area where a lot of people have questions on. Because, for instance, in my case, I have my company in the UK, my podcast too in the UK. I am located in Nigeria currently, or anywhere else I want to be. Most of my clients for my company are, and most of the listeners for the podcast are in the US and in Canada. So you can see in a situation like that, I might have a question: where do I protect a trademark? And I'm sure that's a question a lot of people will have dealing internationally. And today, to talk about that with us is Andrei. Andrei is the CEO of Trademark Factory that does trademarks for businesses globally. So he's going to talk about that topic with us today. So welcome to the show, Andre.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So now looking at your profile, you started in Russia, you worked with a couple of big companies, moved over to the Americas, and now you're in Dubai. So how does trademark, like I described earlier, work across different countries? Because most times when we talk about trademarks, we don't talk about one single country.
Yeah, so short answer is it doesn't. Trademarks are done on a per country basis. So if you've got a trademark in Nigeria, nobody cares about that if if they want to set up a business or a brand in US and vice versa. And um, with multi-billion dollar companies, obviously they have the budgets to go global and protect their brands everywhere, and uh, their marketing departments are always having a hard time trying to find a brand that will work universally everywhere. Even they fail. Like, did you know that Burger King cannot have a trademark in Australia, and there they're known as Hungry Jacks
Wow.
for that same reason that somebody trademarked Burger King in Australia and they can't have it, right? So they have to, like, the massive guys, the big corporations, they still have to play around what's available where and making those business decisions as to which jurisdictions are absolute must-haves for this to be a global brand, and which jurisdictions we can have second best choice, right? But the short answer to your question is that you do it on a country by country basis. There are international treaties that make it somewhat easier in some cases. We can talk about that, and based on our pre-interview conversation, that's probably what we're going to do. But in the end of the day, you end up with a collection of trademark registrations in all the countries or all jurisdictions that you want to protect your brand in.
Okay. So now, going through about you, I said that your journey in this field started when you were protecting your dad's music collection. So can you tell us a bit about that and what it taught you about trademark protection generally?
Sure. So it wasn't about trademarks; it was about copyrights.
Hmm.
And the guest you had before did a pretty good job explaining the difference between the two. But look, back in the day, I was still living in Russia. Having my Russian law school and Russian family and Russian house and everything. And I really, even though I was attending my law school, really didn't see myself as a lawyer. Didn't want to be a lawyer. It was more of a kind of a safe way to know that I'll be able to make money in the future. And so one day I come home from law school, and my dad is absolutely furious. I'm like, what's going on? And uh, him and his and my mom, they heard an ad on the radio that basically was his song that they took
Wow.
without his permission and turned that into an ad for Samsung.
Wow.
And so he called the radio station and told them, "Hey guys, you can't just take my music and make it into an ad. You have to get my permission. You have to pay a license fee." And they told him to sit down, shut up, and be grateful that they were making his music even more popular. And he wrote music for over 100 movies in Russia, and he didn't need that kind of popularity. And so if you knew him, you'd know right away. it was the wrong thing to say to him. So he said, okay, I'll see you in court. He slams down the phone. And that's when I came home. I literally came home just after that conversation. And he told me about this and said, can you take these to court? And I'm like, I'm just a law student. I've never taken any classes on intellectual property. He said, yeah, but really, there aren't any experienced lawyers in Russia who do this kind of thing, because that was 1996 when
Hmm.
Russia had just transitioned from the socialist copyright laws, which basically said that government owned everything, and toward the free market copyright laws, which gave authors all these rights that are now universally recognized around the world, maybe except like countries like Afghanistan. But so he said, nobody knows this anyway. Do you want to give it a shot? I'm like, as long as you're okay with me learning as I go, I'd be happy to, and I'd be honored to. And we did it. It took me a few years. I had to take this case with all the appeals, all the way up to the second highest court in the nation. My very first case. And in the process, really, I found that this is something I was passionate about, right? While I wasn't passionate about the general idea of me being, a paper pusher at some law firm, doing this by helping my dad and by really understanding that people who create something that wouldn't have existed if they didn't compose it, if they didn't write it, if they didn't come up with that, uh, are very vulnerable to infringement, because you
Hmm.
can't put an alarm on your IP, you can't put a lock on it. The only thing you can do is use the provisions of the law, and that's really what became my career ever since. And so you asked me, what he taught me about trademarks? Nothing, but it taught me about the importance of having all of this stuff protected and having someone help you to be in your corner, because I saw what it did to my dad. Like, for a long time, really, there was barely anything else he could think about other than how do we punish those guys who took something that wasn't theirs to take and turn that into an ad. And so, going back to trademarks, that's the same thing that happens with business owners. Like, imagine you start a business, you put together a brand, you start getting some recognition, and then you realize that you are part of some trademark dispute, whether you are on the defending side when someone sends you a demand letter and saying, hey, you're using my brand, or whether you caught someone else being a copycat to your brand. If you're a business owner, if you're a founder, if you're a CEO, whatever, this is going to eat so much of your focus. This is going to eat so much of your attention that uh, whether you win or you lose that lawsuit, first of all, you're going to spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
Second, you're going to spend a lot of time. But like I said, it's going to eat away of your focus, which means that you're not building a business while you're fighting this. So the big lesson here is that you, as the business owner, really have a responsibility to your business to minimize the risk of that happening.
Yeah.
And you can't eliminate all litigation, you can't eliminate all disputes, obviously, but what you want to do is you want to maximize your chances of success and minimize the risk of having even to go to court. And that's what trademark registration accomplishes for you.
Hmm, amazing. So now, you mentioned earlier that how trademark works is on a per country basis, apart from the treaties, which we'll go into later. So now, for a business starting out, they feel they have a really unique idea or something they have to trademark or anything. How do they figure out what countries they know they want to grow internationally, but how do they figure out what countries matter most for them to start their trademark registrations?
That's a great question, and we actually have a rule of four here,
Hmm.
here in Trademark Factory. You always, so tier one, you always start with your home country.
Hmm.
And when I say home country, means where the business is registered, right? It doesn't matter where you physically are. Uh, You start with the country where the company is registered. The reason behind that is that by registering your trademark in your home country, you basically buy yourself 6 months of a grace period when you can file your trademark anywhere else, and you can backdate it to the date of your application in your home country.
Hmm.
Uh, and you don't get that luxury if you file in any other country first, right? So that's the first step. The second tier is you look at countries where you think you're going to be making lots of money from your brand. It doesn't matter how much money you're making there today. I mean, if you're all already making money, like you mentioned, right? So you UK, US, if you're already making money from there, great, kind of a good indicator. But even if you're not yet, but you have plans that this is my main market, this is the market that's going to generate revenue for me. And to me, the magic number is around 30K a year, right? Not a huge amount of money, but noticeable enough to justify the expense of getting a brand trademark. So that's kind of the second tier. Look at revenue. So if you're a Canadian company, but you have business in US, get the trademark in US. If you're a US company, you have customers from UK or Nigeria. Well, again, this is really not about you. It's about the customers.
Hmm.
Where are the people who are going to take out their credit cards and give you the money in exchange for whatever you're trying to sell to them, right? And if you have a whole cluster of people in a jurisdiction, make sure you are protected there. The third tier is countries where you have lots of expenses. So if you have a branch, if you have headquarters, if you have your ads targeting a particular country, like if you have paid traffic, things like that. And for that, the threshold is even lower. I say it's about 5K a year. So if you actually actively looking at a jurisdiction as you wanting to send money there to establish something, probably good idea for you to own the most valuable asset you're going to build, which is your brand. And fourth, it's kind of optional depending on what you do. So if you are in the business of making and selling physical products, and if you have those products made overseas for cost reasons, usually, or logistics reasons, you want to make sure you trademark your brand there. So I'm
Whoa.
going to give you true story without giving the names. So there's this e-bike company, American company that does e-bikes, and so they found a factory in China to make their bikes, and they had all of their brand protected in the U.S. and Canada, and so they find a factory in China to make their bikes. They pay the money to the factory to make the bikes. The factory makes the bikes, and puts those bikes in a big container, that puts container on the ship. And just as the ship is about to leave port, the captain of the ship gets an inspection with a demand letter saying, hey, you've got a container with counterfeit bikes in it.
Hmm.
What do you mean counterfeit? Well, there's someone in China who registered the brand of the bikes in China. And under Chinese laws, which is basically how it works universally, exporting products marked with a trademark out of that country constitutes trademark infringement if that
Whoa.
brand is trademarked by someone else. And so what happens, the captain of the ship sends a note to the factory saying, hey, your bikes were arrested. I can't ship them. And we've got a problem. So the factory sends a message to the owner of the US company that ordered the bikes and says, whoops, we've got a problem.
Wow.
Right. And look, I'm being lighthearted about it, but if you actually think about it, how does the guy in US feel about this? They've just spent a crap ton of money to make the bikes, to advertise the bikes, to do the pre-orders of the bikes, and now they can't have the bikes. And there's really no good no good outcome from here because well, what do? Right? You say, okay, let's make new bikes and just bury the money that I've just paid you, or do we pay off the Chinese company that trademark that brand and whatever
Yeah.
they're going to ask because basically they're keeping you hostage? Like, what do? Right? And that's why if you're making a product overseas, even if you have zero plans to sell there, right? So the American company didn't plan to sell their bikes in China. That's why they're like,
Yeah.
well, we don't trademark in China. Well, you do. So that's kind of the long answer to a question that I hope was going to be of value to our audience. So home country, revenue, expenses, and factories.
That's actually an amazing answer because it makes the whole thing clear, even to me. Because, like I mentioned before, most of my expenses are where I stay. What do they call it? Revenue is from across the ocean. Then my cost. So yeah, so that makes a whole lot of sense about knowing where and where to trademark. So now for a business who, like I said before, is just starting and they want to start, okay, probably they are doing physical products, so they have to cover where they are manufacturing and where they want to sell and where they have their expenses and everything. What's a smart way to start protecting their brand internationally while they stay on that budget? Because I know you mentioned you had some ballpark figures like revenue of 30K, where you make at least revenue of 30K, where you have expenses for at least 5K. So yeah.
So that's, I mean, look, the priority list that I gave you is exactly what it is because
Hmm.
small business owners, or if you're making low seven figures or six figures, like you can't afford to do this, and you don't need to do this. You need to pick your battles because your responsibility to business is not just to have a suitcase load of trademark registration certificates.
Yeah.
Your responsibility is to build a business that makes money. And But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're protecting your bases. So it's always a compromise. It's always an issue of prioritization. And look, I've so when I worked in Russia, I worked with the largest international law firm in the world. And I've done work for Apple, for Microsoft, for Google, for Dream, like all the big names you can think of. I've probably done something for them. And even these guys, they have budgets, right? Nike's got budgets. Google has budgets. Uh, all of them have budgets. So as trademark attorneys, we can offer you a billion ways, a billion things you can trademark, right? Just give me a budget. I'll make sure, I'll find enough assets for you to trademark.
Yeah.
And that's how, it usually starts. But then the question becomes, how do you prioritize them? Like if you potentially have 25 things you could trademark and you only have money for three,
Hmm.
how do you pick, right? And this is actually, this is something that my team at Trademark Factory does really well. When you book a free call with a strategy advisor, they're actually going to ask you, what do you do? What are you planning to do? Where you're planning to do that? Do you have a name? Do you have a logo? Do you have a tagline? Or maybe you have multiple of these or that, like product names, service names, the company name, like all of those things are potentially trademarks to register, and they can help you prioritize what goes at the top of the list and what can wait.
Hmm.
Because again, you don't want to spend all of your money on trademarks. I mean, as much as I would like to kind of uh, uh, sell the importance of trademarks, and I do, but a trademark of a failed business doesn't mean very much unless it used to be a huge business like Kodak, right?
Yeah.
Their trademark is still worth something. But if you're just starting out and you don't go very far and you fail, right, just because you had a trademark is not going to be worth very much. So it's a compromise.
Hmm. Amazing. Okay, so now we talked about international treaties earlier that can help get being covered globally or at least to a large extent easier. So can you mention any that works well?
Yeah. So well, first of all, I want to mention the European Union because the cool thing with EU is that you can file one trademark and it covers the entire 27 countries. It's considered one jurisdiction for the purposes of trademarking, and this is something that's widely used. And of course, it's because of whatever international treaty the countries of the EU have entered. But on top of that, the most well known treaty, international treaty that helps you protect your brand internationally is called Madrid Application or Madrid Protocol. There's kind of two different versions of that, and different countries are a part of it in one way or the other. Not all of them. There are still lots of countries, big enough countries that you can't do through Madrid, and you still have to do them directly. And there are pros and cons to Madrid. First of all, the economics of Madrid only start making sense after you do at least five, seven,
Oh,
now probably closer to seven jurisdictions or more. So if you only want to file your trademark in three countries, and again, EU is considered one, right? Then Madrid is not a good option because it's going to cost you more, and it's going to it comes with risks. So the problem with Madrid is that it needs to be based on a trademark that you have filed in your home country. So
no.
that's another reason why you want to start at home, because you can then take your home application and uh, do a Madrid filing. And so when you do a Madrid filing, you basically tell them, okay, I have this trademark application filed in my home country. Now I want this same brand for the same owner, for the same goods and services to be protected in this country, in this country, in this country, in this country. And you just put check marks, right? And they'll take that. The problem is if your trademark in your home country doesn't make it for whatever reason, it's denied, it's canceled for non-use, it's opposed, and if for whatever reason it's no longer active within 5 years, then all of your Madrid applications automatically die, right? They're
Oh,
dependent on the status of your home application.
oh,
Whereas if you start in Nigeria and you file a trademark in US, you file a trademark in Canada, you file a trademark in EU, file a trademark in uh, Singapore, just making things up,
yeah.
and you file them directly, right? Then even if your Nigerian trademark application doesn't make it, your other direct applications will be independent, and if you get them, then your brand will be protected there. So Madrid starts making sense after seven or more trademark countries, right? And that's what the big guys do. And the other thing is that US actually is, even though it is part of the Madrid application system, uh, if you're not from the US and you're filing your trademark in your home country somewhere else,
Yeah.
we strongly discourage filing uh, Madrid applications that cover US, because in more than 80% chance, probably closer to 90% chance is going to be rejected. And the
Well,
cost of you fighting this is going to be more than you're going to save by filing through Madrid. So, because of how the US examiners look at those applications, the vast majority of them get sent back. And you still have to find a US attorney. You still have to take care of all those office actions. So, much better to start in US directly and just have it as parallel processes.
amazing. I think that explanation makes everything clear because a lot of people look at these things and they just look like lots of words. So that makes it really clear and really useful. So we know that now the Madrid Protocol it makes sense when you're filing like seven jurisdictions. But if you're just filing in, like you said, using the rule of four, just filing in what's necessary to you, then it's better to do it directly. So I think building on that, um, people offer different services globally or different things globally. Some people have physical products like the e-bike you mentioned before. Some people offer digital services like My Business. So, are there different trademark strategies when you're covering digital services and when you're covering physical products?
Well, really, the approach depends on the plan of the business owner. And for that, we have a very simple framework as to do you even need a trademark, right? And the framework is just two questions. The first question is um, if everything goes well with this business, right? Like I have these dreams, I have these ideas. If everything goes according to the plan, uh, is it likely that I will be still offering products and services under this brand 2 or 3 years from now?
Hmm.
And the answer to that question could be either yes or no. And there are plenty of businesses that are intentionally short-lived, right? You put something up there, you come up with a fad, you make lots of money and you move on 6 months later. There's nothing wrong with that strategy. But it's a very different strategy in terms of trademarking compared to when you're building, a factory that you hope your grandchildren are going to still benefit from, right? And so that first question is it likely that the brand is still going to be around 2, 3 years from now? The reason I say 2, 3 years from now is that it takes about a year and a half to get your trademark registered in the US, about 4 years in Canada, about a year in
Oh,
EU. So it's a long process, right? If at the end of that process you don't need a trademark anymore, why bother with the process, right? So if the answer is no, then you say, okay, I don't need a trademark. If the answer is yes, we'll still use this brand, then the second question you ask yourself is, again, assuming that everything goes according to the plan, best case scenario, you're 2 or 3 years from now, do you think this brand that you picked for your products or your services, whether it's digital services or e-bikes or whatever the hell it is, you ask yourself, is the brand helping me grow this business faster? Which could be, does it help me generate more leads? Does it help me generate leads at a lower cost? Does it help me with my sales conversion? Does it help me with finding better talent who want to work for me because of the brand?
yeah,
Does it help me get cheaper investor money? Does it help me get cheaper bank money? Because that's what established brands do, right? Does it help me get more repeat customers? Because again, think about it. You go to a supermarket to buy toothpaste, right? You go through the shelf, and they all have the same glop in different tubes, but it's just different brands, and you treat them as this is my toothpaste. You don't call it this is a toothpaste by this brand. You call it this is my toothpaste,
yeah,
and that's the power of a brand. If you have that brand, obviously it makes it easier for them to sell to you over and over and over and over again. So if the answer is, yeah, of course, the brand is going to do at least one of those things if we're successful, then the answer is trademark it today. Treat it as an investment. Even if you're not making any money today, you make the investment in putting this thing off the ground, and it's a risk reward thing, right? Because the risk is you spend a little bit of money to get a trademark for a business that fails. Maybe you're $2,000 to $3,000 out of pocket doing this.
yeah,
But the upside is you spend $2,000 or $3,000 and you built a brand that's worth millions. That's the highest ROI you'll ever get for your money. And to me, if you look at it from the business perspective, you're much better off making that investment now compared to when it's too late. And if the answer is, you know what, even if the business is super successful, the brand itself is not really going to do much for us anyway. That's a good signal for you to go back to the drawing board and say, maybe I should come up with a better brand. Because if even in the best case scenario, you're not relying on the brand to do the heavy lifting for you after you've succeeded, then you picked a brand. there's no good reason in the world to spend all your marketing efforts building a brand that you don't care about, that does nothing for you, even in the best case scenario. So that's kind of a very simple framework that we use, and I'm hoping that it's easy enough to understand and follow.
Yeah, yeah, it is. So now, I think the next thing I'll talk about is with trademark factory. What does international trademark protection typically costs in different countries?
So look, we are actually now focusing significantly more on just North American markets, US and Canada. We can help with international trademarks. We've got foreign associates around the globe, and we can file Madrid applications, all of that stuff. And really, it's a very fact specific thing. But we find that it's, again, our target market is mostly US and Canada, or
Yeah,
businesses who want to sell in US and Canada. And so that's kind of where more than 98% of our business comes from. So the the international aspect of it, of course, we understand it. We can help organize this. We can orchestrate this. We actually have a flat international coordination fee. Like, if you want us to find you a law firm that's going to take care of it, so that instead of us trying to guess everything and try to kind of bill you regardless, we're just going to find. This is actually coming from my experience with a big law firm in Russia,
yeah,
because I realized that what we do is something that big firms like Nike's got. They got their internal department, right, that deals with trademarks. And when they need a trademark done in some country where they don't have the competence to do it internally, what they do is they go to their legal team, internal legal team, and say, "Hey, we need a trademark." Again, I'm just making this up, in Zimbabwe, right? And who do we have in Zimbabwe? And the role of the guy or the girl who leads their trademarking team internally is to research the law firms who can file trademark in Zimbabwe, make sure that they're legit, and make sure that they're going to establish some sort of a process of accountability to make sure that the firm does the work.
yeah,
But, and of course, the person inside that team, she's not going to charge Nike for finding the firm, because that's the salary, right? That's what she gets paid for as a salary. He gets paid for as a salary, and then they're just going to pay the Zimbabwean firm directly, right? Because that's what the team found. But again, smaller businesses, they don't have the internal team of trademark attorneys, right? And what Trademark Factory can do is basically act as if we were, right? So we're not going to say, "Hey, like, I don't have competence, me personally, doing trademarks in Zimbabwe. I have no idea, right? But I know how to tell red flags. I know how to find a good firm. I know how to find a good deal. I know because we have these relationships, we're probably going to get better deal than you're going to get directly." And what I want is to get a flat fee for my trouble, and I want you to deal with that firm directly. So that's what kind of the model that we're switching to mostly for our international filings. It used to be, that we would first get the quotes, we'd add some of our markup, and then if something happened, we would keep doing. It's too complicated. It's not transparent, and I don't like that. So we want to make it really easy for business owners.
amazing. I think that's a really good deal when you look at it. So now, over the course of your career and all that, what's the most, or what are the most expensive mistakes you've seen business making while trying to protect their brands internationally?
Well, the most expensive mistake is not protecting your brand. Really, this is the most costly mistake that you can make, because you're trying to save a few dollars, and you end up either in a rebranding situation, which is going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, or you're going to get in a litigation situation when you're going to have to fight over something. And the thing with the thing with fighting over a brand that you didn't protect correctly is that even if you win in court, you're never going to get your attorney fees back.
Yeah.
So, and that's really, so here's the thing. When Here's the importance of registered trademark. When you send a demand, so let's say you caught somebody who's copying you, okay,
Yeah.
uh, and you send them a demand letter saying you are copying our brand, you're passing off your products as if they were ours, you're a bad person, right? Well, the first thing they're going to do, they're going to read this and they're going to show it to their lawyer, right? And the first thing their lawyer is going to do is the lawyer is going to check: did you trademark the brand? Did you have a did you do the simple thing that the government gave you an opportunity to do, to claim that you want these rights protected? And if the lawyer sees that you haven't filed your trademark, you haven't registered your trademark in that jurisdiction, the advice he's going to give to the bad guys is: look, these guys, they chose not to spend $2,000 to $3,000 to trademark the brand. How likely is it that they're going to spend $150,000 to take you to court that's going to
Yeah.
go for 3 years? Zilch, right? And he's going to say, at this point, I would suggest that you just ignore this letter. And if they do decide to sue you, then we'll decide what to do with it. Because again, risk reward, right? And if the same situation, they get that letter, they take it to the lawyer sees that you have a registered trademark. The advice he's going to give to the infringers is going to be very different.
Hmm.
He's going to say there is no way you can win because
Hmm.
they've got a registered trademark. So yes, I can, make this take longer. I can drown them in motions that you're going to have to pay for, by the way. Uh, but we can extend this, but there's no winning. So my advice to you, the lawyer is going to say, is to quietly take this down, change the brand, don't pay them any money, and hope that you taking it down will be enough for them to go away. Right? I've done this enough times to know that it's exactly how things go, and that's a huge difference because in the first scenario, you end up with a strongly worded letter that gets ignored. In the second case scenario, you end up with them complying. Right? They may not pay you without a court case, but they will stop infringement, and that's super important. So
Yeah.
to your question, what's the costliest mistake? Is hoping that you will be able to deal with this later when your business becomes so big that you got all this money that you can give to lawyers to fight on your behalf. That's the silliest thing you can do.
Hmm, amazing. So now, for a business who has listened to this episode and is now thinking about filing or protecting their brand internationally, what's the first thing that you would advise that they can do once they finish this episode?
Um, well, first thing is you need to know if your brand is even trademarkable, because if it's
Hmm.
not, and often it isn't, right? You think it's unique, you think it's different enough from everything else you've seen, but it might very well not be trademarkable. And if it's not, then again, you're spending all your time, money, and energy building a brand you cannot own. What's
Hmm.
why would you do that? So the first step is to find out whether it's trademarkable. And uh, what we do, our process at Trademark Factory, is the first thing we do when you become when you become our client is we run a very comprehensive trademark search, and we provide a registrability assessment as to whether your brand is similar enough to something that's already trademarked, or whether there are any other absolute grounds for why your brand can be rejected. And so our most popular package comes with unlimited search, which
Hmm.
means that if your first choice option is problematic, you can go back to the drawing board and come up with a few alternatives. And we're going to keep doing this for free until you pick a brand that you love and that we tell you is trademarkable. And once we have that, that's when we file it. So the first step really is for you to go to trademarkfactory.com and request your free call with one of our strategy advisors. They're the ones who are going to help you prioritize what's more important to start with. They're the ones who are going to explain how this works in your particular situation. And they're the ones who, if you feel we're a good fit, will be able to help you get started with us.
Amazing. So the best way for anyone to get started or continue this conversation is going to trademarkfactory.com.
Yep.
Okay, so I think that will be on the show notes. That will be on the screen once this episode goes out. So thank you so much, Andre, for coming on, for being so generous with your knowledge, with your time, and sharing with us on the Tech a Business podcast today.
Thanks for having me. I hope we created some good value for your audience.
Definitely. And for the listeners, episode 88, we talked about the basics of trademarks. Today, we went deeper talking about protecting your brands internationally. So if you know anyone who has issues with trademarks, more questions about trademarks, or has questions that were answered in this episode, share this episode with them. And till next week, when we come with a brand new episode of the Tech Your Business podcast, don't forget to protect your brand, keep taking your business. Bye for now.